So pretty much I found out that I was having a brother, but really quick. Me and my brother were adopted. So my mom didn't do the whole like, you're going to be a big sister. You're going to have a little mini me. So for 7 years, it was like, it was all about Luz, right? Like my parents dove in, like I was the golden child, all of it, all of it. And then it just abruptly stopped.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. Today we have the beautiful Luz Michelle. She has her own company, Hard-Headed Comedy, and she is open for D.L. Hughley. But today we're going to get down and dirty and talk about how she adapted to being an adopted kid when the family went and adopted another kid in a blink of an eye. So how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
Describe a banana. Okay. First, I would describe the color. It's vibrant yellow like the sun. And then I would say
how would that help you describe how it tastes?
Well, the sun, like warm summer.
Okay.
Right? Like a little, like I know for me, I always had a banana in my lunchbox growing up. So that smell was always like freshness. Like I would always be the first thought in my head at the youngest age of like 5. Like I'd be like, it smells fresh. And it would
no, because ours would always split.
Oh,
maybe because we were in England. We didn't have a fresh supply of bananas up there. And it would all be like they'd split, and it would stank banana.
I liked it. And I cook a lot with it. Like I'll bake banana cake. I'll do banana pudding. My favorite cake is banana cream pie. Like
banana pudding, 100%. Banana cream pie, I can understand. What is the obsession in America with banana bread?
It's sweet. That's what I like about it. It has a thick crust. It has a thick, sweet crust. That's what I like about banana cake. I'm a crust woman.
You never had the sarnies crust cut off?
Yes.
But if you're a crust woman, maybe that's why, because they cut the crust off and you're like, darn it, I will be a crust lady. God save the crusts.
I am like pizza. I eat it crust first. My kids, when they eat pizza, they save me the crust and they know not to make it soggy.
Oh,
I haven't think probably because my mother used to cut them off.
So you did the opposite without realizing. Oh, here we have an awakening. During the first part, we haven't even got to the main question yet. Yes, crusts. My mother burnt everything. She was a good burner because you didn't want anything undercooked. Probably because we had that British beef, which I still can't give blood in America, by the way, because I was in England when they had the mad cow disease. So I'd like to say I'm living proof that it didn't affect anyone, but jury's still out. Think. So when did you thinking back, when did you have your first existential life crisis then as a kid?
For me, it was 7 years old.
Oh, clear as a bell, huh? Clear as a bell.
I'm like 1987, about 1:00 p.m.
All right. Now you can tell me the ambiance. Was it sunny? Was it raining?
That's a good question. I believe it was because, let me just think date-wise here really quick. September. It was probably winter. Yeah, it was around the winter time. So there was it was cold. It was cold. And so pretty much I found out that I was having a brother, but really quick. Me and my brother were adopted. Okay, we're adopted. So my mom didn't do the whole like, you're going to be a big sister. Like, this is going to be great. You're going to have a little mini me. And, that whole cheering thing that they highly recommend. For me, it was, I was told we're getting a brother. Next thing I knew, 2 days later, we were on a plane going to Bogota, Colombia. And then we had to stay there for 2 weeks because at that time, it was like a lot was going on. It just wasn't safe. So we had to actually stay for a minute. And then next thing I knew, I had a brother. Like there was no like... So for 7 years, it was all about Luz, right? Like my parents dove in, like I was the golden child, all of it. And then it just abruptly stopped. And then the dynamic of me and my mother completely went the other way.
Oh, now, were you from Colombia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they wanted to keep in the same country.
Yes.
Now were your parents Colombian?
My biological?
No, your adoptive parents.
Oh no, they're Eastern European Jews.
Oh, okay. So that in itself, okay, that's breaking down another sort of cultural boundary there.
Mhm.
Okay, so they got you from the same agency.
Yes. Yes. No one has ever said that or asked that. Yes, they got it from the same agency.
Hey, obviously you were a good example, because why else would they not do it again?
Yeah. Oh, if I would have heard that 20 something years ago.
Right. Now he arrived, and as looking back now as an adult, okay, was he a good soul? Like, if you didn't have your experience with your mum or what went on, if you look back as this spirit came into your life, were they genuinely a good person, or were they like an absolute terror?
Cranky, very cranky. It was a cranky energy, like always needed something, always had to have it, huge tantrums. So like it was there, but it was kind of the same scenario where the spoiledness was just so high that I probably didn't really get to know my brother till these past couple of years, I would say.
So COVID helped.
Pretty much. It saved our relationship.
So do you think, and I'm asking as an adult now, not as a child, that part of the reason they didn't say anything was because there could be so many loopholes, things could fall through. They didn't want you to get excited or not excited. They were maybe their own trauma of what they'd gone through, with bureaucracy, just wanting to see if it happens.
I can understand that, because I learned later on, like when I started to piece things together, I started to remember like hearing the conversations, because like they would get mail sometimes and there were pictures of babies in it, right? And my mom would show the picture, but she didn't really say much about the person in the picture. So later on in life, I was just like, oh, you know what? Those were probably some of the children that the agency was sending them, and the letters. And
He showed you the picture.
yeah, I would see pictures.
And
But
how old, do you remember how old you were when you'd see the picture?
So he came when I was 7, so probably between 6 and 7. Like
6 and 7. So do you think that she was sort of trying to read your vibe?
Maybe.
Like,
you know what? That's a very good question, because we were extremely close. Like I was the baby that you couldn't take me out of her arms. I was the kid that you dropped off at daycare and cried all day. Oh yeah, that kid. I could say that I'm a mom. The kid that cries all day looking out the window, like that was me. So that's very good. I should write this down and tell my therapist. Like, listen to me. How long have I been seeing you?
and yet 5 minutes with Paula, and it's all becoming cleared away, right? Like that. So yeah, because when we have that older understanding, maybe they were trying to get a vibe. So maybe you could have seen your brother as a baby, and maybe that was the one that you didn't go to. And I'm like, that's it. That's the one we're getting.
Could have been. And the thing is, I will always have the picture of him in my head, because you know what? Ooh, that's interesting. Because I remember when my mom showed me his picture, he was the chubbiest baby I ever saw. And I'm not like exaggerating. Like, I mean, the rolls were like they were rolls.
He was a Sherpa baby, right?
Yeah, like the marshmallow puff baby, I remember being like, wow, like I was so in love with just all of that, like, ooh, like I would love to squeeze him or something. And that was the first picture I actually ever saw, but we didn't have the conversation. So that's interesting. Yeah, because that picture is, I could picture it right now. Like I remember the pajamas, how his hair was, like all of it. So that's interesting that picture did stand out. And then, yeah, that's the one they picked.
Yeah, because that right there, we don't know, could be a huge perception shift for your consciousness. Of course, might get into it. I don't know the relationship with what happened with your mum, that there was a moment of, I picked him. You could have in some way contributed to picking him.
Got to tell him that later.
Right.
I'm going to add that to the reasons of why I'm better.
Look, I have a younger sibling who is blood related, and he's always still trying to compete with me. And I'm like, why? You're like the smarter one, the better looking one. Like, why? I don't understand. I mean, like, I was the oldest, thank goodness, because if he was the oldest, my life would have been a wreck. Although I will tell you, I really did want an older brother because I just could then date his friends, because I was the worst dater ever. I was just so awful at dating. Like, I couldn't even get to the date because I'd talk to you and be like, I'm bored already. So bored with you. I don't want to hear about football. Anyway, so you remember the arrival. And then how was, from, again, going back to where you were 7, because we still have our consciousness, we remember, what were your feelings that kept continuing, that everything changed? Like, he wanted obviously more attention and you weren't number 1 anymore. Did that infuse deeper because you felt this rejection from an adoptive parent? So it was a double rejection is where your mind went?
Yeah, and I think I could say now in life, like, I felt abandoned. Like, I feel like we didn't communicate and there was a huge shift. And everyone got on the ship and I'm still on that island. Like, wait, what are we doing? You know, like it was as if I wasn't important enough. Right. Which still shows up in my life till this day, you know, so I've been on a bit of a path of trying to get more answers, you know, just so I can have a better mind quality of life. And interesting that we're doing this. But I think about that in childhood of how it connects now.
Absolutely. So the imprint in the nervous system from a psyche point of view when we're very young, right? It goes in there, it's installed early on, right? And so that's the viewpoint that we have a whole of our life. And until there is a series where we have to look in, I mean, a situation really, COVID was a big catalyst, right? Forced to look in, we realize, oh my gosh, my whole life, I've been looking at it. I mean, I want you to know it wasn't, you know, I had discovered that I knew I was a little different, right? And so I kept trying to overcompensate to either be more clever and all I would do is just show how weird I really was, right? And I didn't understand. I just thought everyone else was, you know, misunderstood me. And, you know, and I figured that out, like, you know, last week.
Yeah, right.
I was like, oh, this is another layer of victimhood.
Yeah. Yes. Another layer of victimhood. Gold. Exactly. That's the journey that I've been on. Like, down to anything, right? Like, if I get into an argument about my husband, I'm now able to be like, why was I so triggered? Right? Like, it was just about cream cheese, but it turned into this whole thing. And then it's like, you know, those pieces. Yeah. A layer.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if you are relating right now to my lovely guest, pop it down in the comments, tell us your opinions, and she's going to ask you to subscribe and like right now.
Subscribe and like.
I've done that to someone and I'd be like, I don't understand what you're saying, Paula. And I'm like, of course you don't. You misunderstand me. All right. And now I'm like, oh, it's because you're a weirdo, an oddball, and you say things cryptically. So what was then the moment that the two of you bonded together?
Me and my mom, or me and my brother?
You and your brother.
Me and my brother. You know, I have to, like, saying it out loud, I honestly feel like him and I, we didn't bond until my father passed away. So that was where we kind of already were in the process of getting things out of how we felt about each other. But when my father passed, I really did have to step in as his older sister, because he was there when my father passed. He tried to save my father's life. Like, he had that whole experience. And at my father's funeral, like, my brother broke for 1 second and he's like, I couldn't save him. I couldn't save him. And in that moment, I felt for the first time, like just that bond where I just put my arms around them and I was like, don't do that to yourself. Like, you are in such a situation that you don't ever know how you're going to show up in it. And you did jump in. You did jump in. You didn't sit there and panic. You didn't freeze. You jumped in. Like, you have to remember that you did whatever you could for our dad. And it was just like we looked at each other and there was no BS in that moment. There was no, oh, let me just say it. Like, it was so real. And then we had a moment a second later, because in a Jewish religion, they're wrapped in cheesecloth, they're in a pine box, like it's this whole dramatic thing. They open it up so you get to say one more goodbye. And we're all, everything. We're talking, we're putting stuff in the coffin. And the man that was holding it said to us, you guys are going to have to hurry up. And me and my brother just looked at him and 100% just went off on him. And then when we got to the gravesite,
so you wandered through anger.
we wandered through anger.
It's important that a lot of therapeutic or says that, oh no, this emotion is bad. No, all emotions are there for a reason. It's how we utilize them, right? And that discernment, that training we haven't had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, don't say I hate something. Okay, but you tell me I'm supposed to love everything. Well, come on now. I can do yin but not yang, right? Through that moment, that honest, pure soul connection, it went beyond your genetics, right? Beyond your age, beyond any physical notion. You had both of your spirits at the same time were like, and then that's what a real connection is.
And it was there, and I think I questioned it for so long and accepted that this is just the way we are. And then it took something so earth-shattering to bring us together, because we had that moment like at the cemetery where we just busted out laughing. We probably looked crazy that we're laughing on the father's funeral, but we were just laughing because it was just like, of course, that was like the last moment. It was chaotic, everyone's yelling and cursing and and now, yeah, I would say now, like he called me today, ironically enough, I was on a walk and he called me, which is like not something we do a lot, but we've been doing more. So the relationship is growing, and he recently got married to a wonderful woman. One of the best sister-in-laws, and I feel so good to say that because a lot of people can't say that. She is. She's God sent. I've always said that. Anytime
so
they gave me,
she fits the boxes that not only is she perfect for him, as a sister, like what he needs, but also as a person to relate to for you.
Because she's so angelic, that when I can come across the table, and I think I did with her, just like aggressive or, angry or has to be heard. And she's more like, okay, like, so she's just such a spirit. So when she came into our family, it was like, we didn't ever hold back from her. Like, we were us. Like, there was no, oh, don't do it around her. And she accepted it. And then through time, I've learned she comes from a humongous family. Like at the wedding, we were like 7 in total, and the rest was 100 and something people were her family.
So that can happen. That can happen, and maybe her on a deep subconscious, unconscious level was looking for not something so big, and then he was wanting a big. So that's where it matches. The idea opposites attract, but the idea, it's like fulfilling each other's healing needs through a relationship, right? And so that's where they both meet on that one aspect.
I gotta write that down. Tell him that too. That's beautiful, because that is what it is. It's exactly like, I remember going to parties with her family, and there was like 100 people minimum, and it's like the 4 of us.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of them will be like, oh gosh, I'd kill to only have 4.
Yeah, but us 4, as if we're 100 people. We're a lot.
Something very important, right? And I've heard this before from individuals who are adopted. I'm not important. There was just a slight glitch. So I'm not important. Yeah.
Yes.
Your experiences, how has that, now looking back, you were in situations that you realized you were just so in people's face because you weren't important, and then other situations where you realized you were important, you just had such a harsh filter, it's never enough?
Mm-hmm. I might have missed the question on the glitch.
Yes. So the question is, where are there examples where you can look back and say, oh, I was so over the top because I was running on I wasn't important?
Yesterday. I swear on it, yesterday. My husband and I were driving in the car, in my car, and I have my sound setting where the volume's a little bit higher in the front. So like when I'm driving long distance with my kids, and let's say they're on their pads or sleeping, I could still have the volume at like a good level, and I like it. So he was about to tell me something with the kids in the back, and I was like, don't worry about talking. They're not going to hear you because I have the music up more. So then he goes into my settings and he's moving it so there's surround sound and it's all balanced. And I asked him 3 times not to do that. Like, stop. I said 3 times to stop, and he didn't. So knowing everyone was safe, I slammed on the brake. Yeah. So yeah. And I looked at him and I said, you're not hearing what I'm saying. I've said 3 times to stop. We have taught our children that stop means stop. And here's a perfect example as to how we apply that. And I'm saying words, but I just felt like, yeah, like I wasn't being heard. I wasn't being respected in the moment. It felt like more like my power was being taken away, and what I already had going on in my sound situation wasn't good enough or wasn't how it should be. And let me fix it and make it better.
So in that particular situation, did he, in this case, acknowledge that and move through? Or are they?
Later on. After hours of silence. Later on, he did, because I did, just like I said, I just re-brought up how we teach stop means stop and no means no. So as parents, we can't just say it, we have to show it. I was like, and the other thing was I was triggered. But I also did say, one of my biggest lessons is I react, stop, and think. And I'm doing my best to teach my children also to, if something happens, stop, think, then react. Like I react. That's my go-to. It's helped me in life. It's paralyzed me in life. It's done everything.
That's because there's no space to pause. Like another phrase is pause when agitated. But if there is a flight or fight response, if there is an initial response to protect oneself, there is no space for the pause. And, part of what, Aware Meditation Inc. does, we teach meditation. The outreach is to go to underrepresented groups. If you want to know more, there's a badly printed image. I really got to get my stuff together, of the ebook, and the link is below. And right now, if one has Amazon Prime, is free, basically. And it's the only thing that has true stories of individuals who learned the practice and it changed their lives, and it's in their own words. So you've got PhD from someone who came out of prison, you have a variety of it. And they share their experience of a practice that you don't have to concentrate with, that their nervous system gently goes from fight or flight to the parasympathetic, where the body starts to get deep rest. And over time, that allows stress that's ready to come up and out in the body, and there to be that space, because that programming is in so deep to protect one. The body is having a response before one can even bear witness to it. Before one, hang on, I'm completely reacting right now. And so there's no space to be agitated, to stop becoming agitated. When one becomes aware of that, that's the first step. But when we're in it, you know, we can't. So it is also a great tool to help with what's in the world. Often people think meditation is just sitting like that. You know, you either have to be a man with a long beard and like hair, or you have to be a woman like super skinny and too much side boob, you know, in images. And it's just not reality. It's not to make you look good. It's to make the soul's path clear, to be able to move through and understand the lessons that we're here for, right? And have that awakening. So even if we are, I don't know, 70 years old, if we're still continuing to learn, right, and move through, we actually then have more relevance in the world, right? And then we find that nature starts to support us being in the world. I mean, we all have genetics that we're only here temporarily. But that example of, you know, we teach the children to do this. We have to be that example, because children remember through action, right? That perception. And that's what you learned through action. You were 7, awake enough to, you know, really memories, but there was an action that shifted. Whoa. And then your lens of I'm not important somehow came through. And by goodness, we got a nice big hook to reel in that fish, which could go a good 35 plus years, you know. That's a corker right there. Oh, look what fish I caught. And I'm just hanging it around with me all the time. But we don't know that we're doing that, right? If we have no space to be able to have that moment where we are, and in England we say beside ourselves, right? Be able to be beside that emotion. We can't, it's on us. It's on us, right? And thank goodness he was able to acknowledge that, because that's the other side of it, right? That one can be in friendships with people who aren't willing to acknowledge that, yes, this is what I'm doing. I see what you mean. Okay. Do you understand? I feel not heard, not important. That is my stuff. I am working on that. But if you are to be with me, it's only going to work if you acknowledge that's where I'm at and you're part of it, whatever it was. Because quite often it then becomes that person who is in the relationship who's open with their stuff, that becomes somewhat, a little bit gaslit, right? Well, that's just all your stuff. Well, you're so perfect yourself, right? Whatever part we have, whether it's 1%, and I like to use this quote, life is 1% event and 99% my reaction to that event, right? Bad things happen, unfortunately. How I respond to it is where I have a choice. The process may take a while, but if I'm choosing to go towards healing rather than suppressing and acting like everything is okay, it eventually is going to explode. Or you have what we call like a caged soul who just is, mind numbing themselves on a daily basis, and their world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's got nothing to do with whether someone has prestige, property, money, status. You can have all of that stuff and still be making your soul diminish smaller and smaller. So if you were to go back now to your 7-year-old self, would there be anything you'd whisper in your ear that you think might have made a difference with your path, maybe learn the lessons sooner?
I think it'd be more, like a little bit more of 2 sentences of just know who you are. Find out who you are, and everything else will fall into place. Because that is something I tell my daughter a lot, because as she's getting older, I'm starting to just see things, when it comes to confidence or her making decisions. Like I always remind her that the most important job you have in your life is to know who you are. Because when you know who you are, you'll make good choices in life. You'll choose what's better for yourself instead of winging it or going with curiosity, right? Your curiosity choice will always be a confident one. So I feel for me, once my brother came and the dynamic shifted, I no longer knew who I was. And I feel like from that moment on till last week, it's like I'm still figuring it out. Like I'm still like, I am this person, or am I that person? And it's ironic because I'm so me every day. I'm so me. When I have conversations with close friends or my husband, like they'll be like, that's you. And I'll be like, but who's that you? Right? Like, why am I still having a life crisis every year of my life? And everyone else seems to know who I am, Like, so I just feel like throughout my life, the weapons, or let's say tools I didn't have, was confidence, or it was having that to do it or say it no matter what. Like I was more shy and reserved growing up and scared, but still like a joker. And then as I got older, I was a huge rebellion. Like I overnight, it was like, cut your hair, cut your jean coat up. Like it was something. I'm terrified with my daughter. Terrified.
And how old was that?
So that was about the 12 to 13 mark. And then it just increased. Like once I got to high school, it was holy moly. It was a ride. And I can see that now too. Like I'll joke with my mom, when I bring up things from the past, because I'm a parent and I'm just, getting wiser as I go. I couldn't even imagine my daughter doing the things that I did. Like I don't know what I would do. Like, if I'm playing hooky, jumping out the window of my room during the night, climbing down like the side of the house to go see a friend, like what? Or stealing my father's car, like all these things. It was just like, oh my God, I don't know what I would do. I would have to put booby traps everywhere. Like, I don't know.
Well, you didn't have social media where you could pin and find out where they were as well. There was a bit of a longer leash, right? Like I was like, where are you? And I'm like, oh, I know where you are, please. I'm just pretending. I know exactly where you are because I could see it on the phone. You're at this place. Okay.
Address, the crossroads. I know where you are. Yeah, my mother would have loved that.
But can you imagine though, if it was more of the 80s and 90s mentality, like that leash was longer anyway, it would have been like, fair enough. Oh, that's not a good neighborhood. Well, we'll see if they move a few blocks in a minute or so, right? It would have just been,
it would have been so different. Because my mother and father were the type who they didn't care. Like they would show up where I was, or they would walk on my bus and yell at the kid who bullied me that day. Like they were just like so intense. And now in life I am, it's like, I feel like my kids do that. Like my daughter, one day I was the mystery reader. They were still doing Zoom. And I read a child's book and I was animated. I gave life to these characters. You pre-record, you send it. My daughter comes home that day and I'm like, so, how'd it go? Did you like the book mommy chose? And she's like, I love the book you chose. She's like, but why couldn't you just read the book? She's like, every page you were like, she's like, all the other parents just read the book.
But that's the personification in Ab Fab, right? Adina and then her daughter is like, Mom, right?
What?
Who are you? I'm the adult here, right?
Well, I edited it. I watched it 14 times. It was a phenomenal performance.
Listen, this is my next TikTok, child. This is my next TikTok. I'm going to dissect it, and for the next 14 weeks, put a sound bite every single week with hashtag, and I'm going to tag you so all your friends see it.
Exactly. With like 75 hashtags or something, like, oh my God.
Mom, why so many hashtags? I needed to circulate. Well, it's been an absolute delight to chat with you. Those of you who have any connection here, please put it down in the comments, or all her info is going to be in the description for you to reach out if you want to. And with that, we'd like to thank you all for joining in and listening to another episode of Cosmic Chat.